Welcome to the Commissaire Commentaries podcast. This is season 2, episode 2. We are a podcast by USA cycling officials for officials, riders, and the cycling community as a whole. And we are here to discuss various cycling and officiating topics that explore who our officials are, why they do what they do, and what we can do to help our officiating program thrive. I'm Marcy Weiss, and this is Ryan Fu, our other host. And today we have with you Robin Lee, a newer official who is just starting out. So in the last episode, we featured our Hall of Fame member, Diane Fortini, and she dedicated over a quarter of a century to the sport of cycling. So now we're going on the other end of the spectrum with someone newer and why Robin has gotten involved and what his first takes are as he begins his journey in officiating. So here is our exploration of what it means to be a new official in a post-pandemic era. And we met Robin at Tour of the Gila in Silver City, New Mexico a few weeks ago. And he had a chance to shadow the cruise and hang out. So we got to know him, got to work with him a bit, and here's Robin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be part of this, part of the officiating community, as well as a guest on this podcast.
I'm going to share just a brief initial impression of Robin when I first saw him at Gila. As many of you know, I'm Asian, and in the cycling community, we don't have a lot of Asian officials. When I first started 20 years ago, it was just Jeff and I, and we had this kind of running joke when we went to some of the larger events. We'd count how many Asians there were. Usually there were less than a handful. But when I met Rob, I was like, oh, great, there's another Asian that's an official. And especially when Dot recommends somebody to talk to, it was like, oh, this is going to be, I think this would be a great discussion having you on, Robin, especially seeing your enthusiasm and just your interest in constant learning at Gila that I was really impressed with. And yeah, today we'll learn a little bit more about you. How did you get into officiating?
Yeah, of course. So I kind of, if we rewind a little bit, I kind of got into cycling when I was started school in United States. I moved to the United States a little over 10 years ago, and was in Boston for college. And initially, I was training for marathons. And after 2015 Seattle Marathon, I really messed up my IT band, and I couldn't run more than 5 miles without feeling the pain in my knees. So after that, I still want to continue to be active. So I, under a few of my friends, that inspired me to pick up a bike. And that's how I kind of got into cycling. And then in 2016, I joined a cycling charity called Bike and Build. That we raise money for affordable housing, and then we bike from Providence to Seattle. But ever since then, cycling, it kind of inspired my competitive side, and I got into the racing side of cycling. And then in my last year of college, I was able to join collegiate racing and instantly got hooked, and kind of started racing ever since. And in 2022, I believe, I saw a post on one of the Seattle Instagram posts and saying that there's a lot of Washington races that are canceled due to a lack of officials. And at the time, I feel like, wow, maybe I should do something about it. And just so happened that at the time I was flying to Intelligentsia to race with my wife. And I got an email from Dot, who is a Seattle-based official, and she's very high level. She's a UCI connoisseur, and she was reminding me that, hey, Robin, you should make sure you renew your UCI license, number one. And number two is, I noticed that you're from Seattle, so please come say hi. And I was pretty thrilled, and I went over to say hi, introduced myself, and I mentioned to her that, hey, I noticed there is a lack of official in Washington, and so I'm thinking about maybe get my official license and start a path to help out with the community. And Dot was like, do you want to start shadowing now? And at the time, I was like, I can? Can I do that? And then he immediately was like, yes, let me introduce you to the CR of Intelligentsia, and then brought me over to Steve. And yeah, and I started officiating, shadowing at Intelligentsia. I was doing a lot of scoring on the judging stand. I was working at the pit, and I got a lot of valuable experience and a whole different perspective. And yeah, and that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny that for, being in Washington, that you ended up starting actually shadowing and officiating in Illinois. So that's going to be a fun fact. And it looks like you work the velodrome too out in Washington.
Yes, and after I got back from Intelligentsia, which is, I personally think I had a really, really good start of my officiating introduction, because, Intelligentsia is one of the highest level racing, and especially working at a crit, you get a lot of repetitions of different categories of fields, and also, because riders passes by every a few minutes every lap, and it's really good for me to continue to practice scoring. And I still remember when I was starting out, they gave me a sheet and a clipboard, and I was asked me to write down as many numbers as possible. I remember on the left most hand side, it was when I started out the first couple laps. There's like maybe 1 or 2 numbers, and then as the laps progresses, there's more and more and more numbers, and that was a really fun thing. But after I got back from Intelligentsia, Dot was like, hey, come shadow me at the velodrome. And so I bike over one day and I stay and watch the velodrome racing. And I also, get to shadow how velodrome works. Before then, I had no idea how track racing works. But yeah, it was also, it's like crit, but safer and a little more fun, it seems like. So yeah.
Robin, I know you've actually been tapped on the shoulder to participate in some discussions about recruiting, right?
Yes.
I want to explore a little bit about what you said when you signed up to go to Intelligentsia. How did Dot know that you were there? Because you signed up on the shadowing. Was there a shadowing option, or how did Dot just know you were going to be there and you were a Washington official? Can you explain that part again?
Yeah. So at the time, there was no shadowing an official option for Intelligentsia registration.
Yeah.
At the time, it was just purely Dot emailing me and reminding me that, hey, make sure you renew your USAC license before the race.
I see.
And
Yes.
but at the same time, she didn't stop at just that email, and she was like, hey, I noticed that you're traveling from Seattle, Washington, and I'm also based from Washington, so please come say hi. And it was that initial invitation that leads to a conversation, because maybe at the time when I first talked to Dot, I was just trying to be cool, and I remember that Instagram post that just saying like, hey, maybe I should help out. But instead of just letting that sentence pass, Dot immediately captured that moment and was like, hey, you know what? Just get on the podium now, and we'll get you to start getting that experience, which I was totally caught off guard, but it was a great surprise, because for years when I was doing racing Intelligentsia as a racer, I still remember the first time I met Steve Fury, the CR for Intelligentsia. I was terrified by him. He just looks like the stereotypical official for any USAC event. Whenever I think about official, I think like it was Steve Fury in my head. But being introduced to him and by Dot, and made me realize, wow, Steve is actually very nice and very friendly and approachable. And all of a sudden, I see a completely different side of Steve, and I see him smile, which is, he has a great smile. He just doesn't do it often. And yeah, it was a fantastic experience being able to work alongside him.
Yeah, it almost feels like this Dot created this serendipitous moment where it's just like, you need to renew your license, and by the way, come and say hi to me since you're based in Washington. And that conversation leads to another, which just by happen chance, you had looked at an Instagram post that needed official. So you started another
Yeah.
subsequent conversation.
Yeah,
That's very
definitely.
interesting. Very interesting. Then okay, here's the follow up that okay, that gets you like, oh, you wanna shadow, and oh, you seem interested. And then you give it a try, right? Like
Yep.
you get introduced into scoring, right?
Yep.
And how did it appeal to you about scoring, right? Because I mean, some other people is like, oh, this is boring. But what was it in there that maybe sparked your interest? Like, oh, I can do this, and I want to see what else is further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I thought about it often. Sometimes I thought to myself, like, why is this fun? It's really weird. Um, I think for me personally, I always enjoy watching very high level professionals doing high level things. For example, like I love watching basketball. Like I don't play basketball myself now, even recreationally, but I just really enjoy watching them, showing off their ball handling skills and putting the ball into the basket. Same thing with football, same thing with soccer or any high level sports. It's for me, it's very enjoyable to just watch the masters doing the masterful things. And so when I was initially, put on the stage and scoring, I was immediately put to watch the elite level racing. And to me, it was I get to be at the front line and the perfect spot just to watch. It was really, really cool. And then the scoring part for me is more like hey, let's document and to tell the story of, hey, what exactly happened. And I slowly got very good at it because I always loved telling. I loved to hear a good story, and I love to um, depict a full story. I think I remember coming just finish my first shadowing experience. They let me keep my piece of paper because it wasn't very helpful to them. I bring it back to my wife, and I was so excited. I was like, "Hey, I can tell you every single thing that happened in this race. Look at lap 15. This rider was breaking away at lap 8." He or she got brought back, and this is when this particular person get dropped, and this is the person that this person DNF'd. It was it was weird that I had a sense of accomplishment just retelling the full story of the race. It's almost like I can relive that moment again and again. To me, it was very, very, very cool. And yeah, and I think that at that moment, I was hooked. And I think there's another aspect of it too, because I was put on the stage right after my race. And I was suffering so much in my own race. And then after I got put on the stage, I get to see how other people feel and react and, interact with the course. It was a very different experience. And at that time, I jokingly said to the other official on this podium that, hey, watching others suffer is so much better than suffering myself.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's been many years since I raced as a junior, but it's like kind of cool that we just go out there and we don't have to do like 5-hour 40-degree rides in the rain in the spring.
Yep.
We can do all of our practicing, preparing, reading up within the comfort of our own homes, maybe watching some pro cycling on the TV. But yeah, it's a very different, it's not that sort of cycling suffering, and it's kind of fun to be on the other side of it, definitely.
Yeah.
And definitely like appealing to that analytical side of just enjoying watching things happen and comparing, when you go to a new course for the day that you are, officiating for the amateurs to start out with, and you're watching how they race, and then seeing how the course affects the way they race, and then as the riders get more experience in the higher categories throughout the day, you're seeing how that changes. And yeah, I think that an official probably has to really enjoy that analytical aspect of watching things happen and understanding why, both in the
Yep.
context of racing and officiating or scoring, etc.
Yeah. In a way, it feels like watching a video game, if it makes sense, because I guess this is something unique to my generation. I love playing video games at one point, and ever since then, I stopped playing video games. But occasionally, I enjoy watching a very high level video game. And cycling, a lot of people who never touch cycling might not understand that cycling is a chess game. It's not, even if you're individual racing as a sole rider, you're still playing chess with the limited amount of matches you bring to the table. If you're racing with the team, you're playing chess with a lot more moving pieces. So for me, watching a high level team execute their race plan is really, really fun. And even watching like some of the solo riders entering in, how they are able to disrupt some of the big teams, that to me is also very, very, very fun. It's like watching a chess game.
Robin, after you got hooked at Intelligentsia, you went back to Washington. How did you continue to work on your officiating?
Yeah. So I decided to continue officiating because at the time I had a very, very busy work schedule. So I don't have a lot of time to train as a racer. But I still want to get involved with the racing community, especially because my wife, I got her into bike racing, but somehow she becomes more addicted to bike racing than I was. I spent like maybe 2 or 3 years, really, really developed my career, and I was basically racing on potato fitness. And while she was, training like, at least like 7 to 8 hours a week, and with structure and always trying to put time in. And so she was achieving great results. I don't want to just have her go to a race and I'm staying at home. So I want to be there. I want to see, how her race developed. So I signed up for most of the races that she planned to attend. And that's how I kind of get started with the local scene as well. I would say the very first race locally was, I was pretty nervous because I have no idea what I was supposed to do. And meeting with the CR pre-race was so helpful. And the day off, especially like road races, my very first race in Washington was a road race. And it was very, very different experience compared to scoring for a crit, which is what I was used to at that time after the experience at Intelligentsia. The road race, you have to be in the follow car, and you have to kind of manage the traffic. You have to manage neutraling a field. You have to basically keep an eye out on the riders. You also have to keep score of, hey, which rider potentially get dropped where. So you have to manage a lot of moving pieces and dealing with potential difficulties with radios. I had none of those experience. So going in, I was definitely very, very nervous. However, that morning, it just so happened that one of the field was too small. So then they ended up combining the two field. So I get to sit in the car with the CR and to shadow that whole morning. And after that first race, I feel like, oh yeah, I feel very prepared. I feel I can do this. It's not that hard. And then I was able to quickly develop my own style of tracking what's going on during the race while shadowing, and then was able to apply it in the subsequent races. And I want to mention one thing is my initial hook to officiating was because the analytical mind, because of watching the race up close. However, after starting officiating a lot of the local races, that motivation has changed greatly because after seeing how the CR was, meeting with the race directors, and sometimes seeing after as official, after finishing the whole day, and just thinking back like, oh, some of the things could have done better. And then I will reach out to the race organizers and provide my feedback, and then said that, hey, let me know if I could help you make the race better in the future. Because if they had a bad experience, they will stop putting on races, and then the whole cycling community suffers. And that's the least thing that I want to happen. So my motivation to officiate or becoming official or continue to officiate changes from watching the race from selfish reasons to I really want to help the race organizers be successful and put it on a very successful event.
I think that's very important, Robert. You've evolved into even a higher level of why we do what we do, which is we want to make the race better because that just creates a virtuous cycle, right?
Yep.
And where you will play that influence is as a chief referee when you're working with all the stakeholders and ensuring that that event gets conducted in a safe, fair, and fun manner. That's
Yep.
a mantra that we've explored in the earlier season. So how did you go from Washington and then Texas to East Coast and New Mexico and then explore other parts of the country as an official?
Yeah. The funny thing is, I didn't just travel there to officiate like, solely as a purpose. I have a job that required me to travel a lot, and my wife and I, because we really bonded over traveling to different bike races. So we basically every year we already have our races that we want to travel to planned out. So, for example, like Tour de American Stair Lane, we always travel there, and it's always a fun time. Like Intelligentsia is always a fun time. And last year we traveled to Seattle, and then this year we planned very early on that we are going to Gila. Originally, it was to support one of our friends who will be potentially will be racing for one of the pro men field. But unfortunately, due to a medical reason, he had to drop out. But we already booked our flight, so for me, it was like, well, might as well go. Yeah, and then throughout all those travels, I always will reach out to Da and mention that, hey, I'm traveling to this place, and I might have some free time on this weekend, and if you can connect me with the local officials, I would love to shadow, or I would love to help out and work at one of the events. So one of the examples is when I was traveling to New York City to visit my wife's family. I reached out to the local officials, and just so happened that they were missing one official for the Prospect Park race. So I was able to work there as a assistant referee, and it was a really, really fun time.
So after seeing officiating around the country, and then when we just saw you at Gila a few weeks ago, what sort of nuances in those local races have you seen, as well as differences at the UCI level?
Yeah, definitely. The UCI level races. When I went to Gila, it was my very first UCI level races. I have heard from my local officials who are also UCI commissars describe the differences between USAC events and UCI level events. At the time, Zach mentioned to me that at UCI, everyone only do one specialized work, and you have to be darn good at it. Versus at the USAC local level, many people get to wear multiple hats, and you could be judging, but at the same time helping out with the officiating, like the refereeing. You could be working at the pit and also signal to help out with the traffic management, stuff like that. Versus at UCI level, you have to get that one task right. At the time, I didn't quite understand how that will work, because locally, we are always understaffed. It's always like 3 to 4 officials, sometimes 5 officials working at the local events. So it was hard for me to understand how could that possibly be. But when I was at Tour de Gila, and I just see so many officials for one event, it was eye-opening. There was motor officials, there is officials in every single car, there is for the crit, there's officials on the stage, there's officials on multiple different pits. So the amount of resources UCI level races have available to them is a lot more, and that's how people are able to highly focus on one thing, and also rely trust on other coworkers gonna do their part. So that's, to me, that's the biggest difference.
All right. Now you've gotten a taste of international UCI racing, and you're on your way to completing your B modules, what does the future look like, Robin, for you in terms of your next immediate goals with officiating?
Yeah. So when I first got into officiating, my goal was very simple: just try to help out with as many local races as possible. Because at the time, I thought to myself, if I were to do those races as racers, they won't have enough officials, so the race will be canceled. So I can't race anyway. So I might as well, sacrifice my own racing and help out with the local community. That's my very early on goal, just to help out locally. But I was chatting with Dot, and Dot all of a sudden told me that, hey, 2028 Olympics is in LA, and I hope to see you there. And at the time was such a shocker, because I I never set like a goal for myself when it comes to officiating, and I never, think this is something that, it's like I never thought it's like a career in a way, that you have to have career goals. But as soon as Dot mentioned the Olympics, I in my head I was like, Dot, why did you say that? I hate you. Now I actually have to try, because she's now dangling a carrot in front of me, and I have to actually work towards a goal. And being able to make it to the Olympics is something that's really, really cool. I obviously can make it there as an athlete, but if I can contribute to part of it as an official, that would be a really, really cool experience. So yeah, I will hope to get enough experience, and if all the stars aligned, I would love to be working at the 2028 Olympics. If that doesn't happen, that's okay. And maybe I get to be one of the other high-level UCI events and seeing some of the best team duking it out. That would be really, really cool.
Very cool. And yeah, it's definitely exciting, especially as Ryan and I maintain our involvement to welcome in new officials, and hope that we can continue to do so for those who have already started and those who haven't gotten bit by the bug yet. So we're also hoping that as we talk about all this, that we can give other experienced officials kind of some inspiration, or just some insight into what someone new might be looking for or might need in terms of support to start, or some information on where you can take this, or information on how to start getting involved in different parts of the country, or how it helps to have officials locally and what those officials can do. So definitely hoping that all of this can just serve as a case study in terms of a new official that's entered our ranks. And I also think that as we have discussions focused around retention and recruiting, as we have for the past, I'm sure forever, in the cycling community with officials, because it is hard to both attract talent, retain that talent, and put the programs in place to keep those people engaged, keep them, feeling valued in the community, that we can try to find ways to make an experience like yours, Robin's, more universal and more accessible to really anyone who has started officiating or wants to start officiating and wants to get involved at a higher level. So whether it is, finding ways to share across local associations and groups of officials in different parts of the country locally, or if it's experienced officials with connections being able to support and help grow and empower those newer officials. I have to say that for Ryan and I, probably, one of our big goals with this podcast is to find things like this and make sure that other officials or people who want to become officials can also experience them. So it's super exciting to hear about how you've been able to work around the country when you're traveling and experience the different ways different people do things, and the communities that have developed those, different processes and procedures based on the local need. And really just hoping that this is some good inspiration and some good fodder for, thinking about our future as a community of officials and how we can bring people in and show them what there is to experience here.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind me adding a few things to that,
Mhm.
I at the beginning of the podcast, Ryan kind of mentioned that there's not as many Asian officials that he saw, and when I saw Ryan, I had the same reaction. I was like, "Whoa, it's there are actually officials that look just like me, and that's a
Mhm.
really really cool thing." And recently, like this past weekend, I was also at Twitter Bloom,
Mhm.
and one of after I finished my race, I immediately put on the race the official blue shirt, and then I was shadowing another chief judge, and at the time, I had my friend who are racers. They come reach out to me and said, "Hey, Robin, after the race, could you tell me how to get started? I'm really interested." And so for me, it's like having people that you can relate to
Mhm.
at those events, and they are working as officials, naturally attract the conversations, the questions. Another thing is, I want to give a quick shout out to Jerry Baker Velodrome, because they have a really really good junior racing track program, and there were some very very young officials at the track. The reason they signed up is because they started out racing as juniors, and then later on they want to continue to help. So then a lot of them sign up to or just start shadowing because they are racing already. And then so we have a bunch of young junior officials over there, and that's a really really great program. Another thing I want to quickly mention is in New York City, when I was traveling to Central Park, they have a very, very well-run program with like a bunch of club teams. They got together and they form almost like a league. And then everyone who wants to participate in the race needs to at least marshal or volunteer for the event. And I feel like if there's a way we can tie in that, like instead of just marshaling at the corners, you can some of them can also offer opportunity to potentially shadow an official, scoring and keeping track, or even be a motor support or neutral support. If there's any opportunities like that, be more accessible to the racers, then I think it will really help the recruiting and also potentially the retention as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that within our own community, absolutely, we have so many opportunities to invite more of the people who are racing or marshaling or involved in any way into hey, come sit on the stand as well and learn about this part.
All right, before we get to conclusion, there's one thing I really want to commend you, Robin. When I first saw you at Gila before the time trial and during the time trial, you're a very good outgoing people person. That's what has attracted others to you to learn more about officiating. You put a really positive light toward officiating. That's something that for myself personally, I'm sort of like game face on, but get serious when it's time to officiate. But I think you brought in this kind of fun and lightheartedness even at that serious race. That's what builds good quality and relationships with people and community. So I applaud you for that efforts, and I'm sure as you work in the working groups, you'll bring some of these ideas on how we can continue to expand our ranks and recruit good quality officials. So looking forward to outcomes of those discussions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And with that, we are wrapping up our second episode for the Commissaire Commentaries today. We want to sincerely thank Robin for his early contributions to cycling, and we look forward to more contributions in the future and really excited to be working at a future race, hopefully next season. Thank you to our listeners. As usual, if you have any ideas or suggestions or like to be a guest on the Commissaire Commentaries, please send them to usac.officials.podcast@gmail.com. And we've also created commissaire.commentaries@gmail.com. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you all in our next episode.
So that's some of the notes I put in.
Okay.
For example, like the one you say, what are the good qualities in officials that I recognize? It's just like I feel like, you know, it's the general caring. If I can see that from any other officials, you know, if I'm working with them, I feel like they care about me as an official, as a person, and then they also care about the cycling community and they care about the race. You know, that's very, very, very inspiring and powerful.
Okay, Robin, I'm gonna point out two things. All right.
Yeah.
First thing, when I like the part, especially Zach's guidance. When you're at a UCI race, you're usually just assigned one specific task, and you better do it darn well. So remember, we were a team. Marcy, you, and I were at the
Yep.
time trial. How
Yes.
did we? How did you and I do as ghosts?
I mean, we were ghosting.
We were ghosting. I guess we were the best ghost that we could have been, right?
Yeah. We did a rotating pace line
That's
throughout the
right.
entire event. It was great.
Right. Second thing I wanted to bring up is, you know, about at the local level, not at the UCI. You missed telling about this really, really cute story about your experience in Texas.
Oh yeah.
With, you know, at races when riders don't pin on their numbers too good, there's a
Yep.
couple approaches that the officials tell the riders.
Yes.
Share a little bit about what you observed at Texas with this story. I really enjoyed it. I think it'd be fun to share.
Yeah, of course. When I was officiating in Washington, I was instructed by the chief of a referee that, hey, always like at least 5 to 10 minutes before the race starts, go around and watch the back of the peloton and just see how the racer pin their numbers, and then try to correct if the numbers are pinned too high, too low, or reverse. Try to have the racers fix right there, and then it will help the scoring a lot better later on. And you know, it was usually me walking over and tell a Cat 5 racer, hey, your numbers are pinned wrong, and then watch them like just went on a full panic attack. It was part of me finding it entertaining. But when I was in Texas, at the time I was traveling there, and I just decided to sign up for one of the local Tuesday night crit. And because as an official, I always know there's a camera, and I want to make sure the camera will pick up my number. So I pinned my number high up so the camera will see it. But when I was lining up, the race official, she walked over and tapped me on the shoulder and said, your number is pinned too high. Only God can see it. And that was a very Texas moment for me. And I was floored, and I was like, wow, that's one way to remind the riders that the numbers are pinned too high.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of a local specialty, right? Definitely,
Yeah.
numbers are a big part of what we do, and obviously paying attention to where the camera is, but how the officials guide racers to adjust their numbers. I thought that was very funny. So thanks for sharing that.